There are certain things that define the times we grew up in, and the 1970s was no different. This decade had a unique style that still stands out today, even to younger generations. While everyone knows about disco music and bell-bottom jeans, there were also small details that only those who lived through that time can fully appreciate. So here are 13 things from the 1970s that kids today would find hard to understand. Watching TV back then was a whole different experience. There were just 3 TV channels, plus public broadcasting. That's right, only 3. No Netflix, no endless streaming options. If you wanted to change the channel, you had to get up and turn the dial by hand. We'd eagerly wait for our favorite shows, especially the nightly programs and Saturday morning cartoons. Those were the days when pouring a big bowl of sugary cereal and spending hours watching your favorite cartoons felt like pure bliss. With such limited choices on TV, it's no wonder kids spent a lot of time outside, and sometimes parents made sure of it. Cassettes were the thing in the 70s, and making a mixtape was a real skill. You had to be patient, sitting by the radio for hours just to catch that perfect song. Even then, you might end up with the DJ talking over the intro, but that was part of the charm. Cassettes could be tricky too. If the tape got tangled, you'd have to use a pencil to wind it back in. But these cassettes were the first step toward what we now call playlists, letting us listen to our favorite songs wherever we wanted. If you were a kid in the 1970s, chances are you ran around pretending to be Superman or Batman while wearing superhero underoos. These weren't just underwear, they were part of your costume, your identity. When you wore them, you felt invincible. Today's kids might never understand the excitement of putting on those superhero underoos and feeling like you could save the world. Record stores in the 1970s weren't just places to buy music, they were social hangouts. Much like malls in the 1980s, young people would go there with friends, browse through vinyl records, and even listen to albums before deciding to buy them. The store employees were music lovers too, often sharing hidden gems with customers. It wasn't unusual to strike up a conversation with a stranger who liked the same music as you. The local record store was a special place, an experience that's hard to find today. Back in the 1970s, hitchhiking was surprisingly common and widely accepted. It wasn't unusual to see someone thumbing a ride on the side of the road, and drivers often picked them up without a second thought. There was a sense of camaraderie on the road that's hard to imagine today. Sure, there were risks. You might meet a few odd characters, but that was part of the adventure. Today, hitchhiking is illegal in many places, but back then it was a normal way to get around. Men in the 1970s had a distinctive look, manly mustaches, sideburns, big hair, and a hint of aftershave. The macho style was all about looking confident and bold, often with a few buttons undone to show off a hairy chest. This unique swagger is something that's hard to replicate today. Women also had their own beauty trends in the 1970s. Sun-In was a popular product for getting sun-kissed highlights, and many girls loved the smell of Love's Baby Soft, a sweet fragrance that defined the era. These grooming habits gave people their signature 70s look, something that's hard to find in today's world. Answering the phone in the 1970s was a bit of a gamble. There was no caller ID, so when the phone rang, you had no idea who was on the other end. It could be your best friend, or it could be a telemarketer. You'd often get tangled up in the phone cord as you talked, or you'd be shouting across the house to let someone know the call was for them. Today's kids might find it hard to believe that we used to answer the phone without knowing who was calling. If you wanted to capture a moment in the 1970s, a Polaroid camera was the way to go. It was amazing to click the button and instantly have a photo develop in your hand. But you had to be careful since each roll of film had a limited number of pictures. And yes, we all shook the photos to make them develop faster, even though that was just a myth. You couldn't carry a Polaroid camera everywhere, so photo booths were popular too, found in places like malls and arcades where teenagers would take fun and goofy pictures with their friends. If you stepped into a 1970s kitchen, you'd probably see mushroom-themed decor everywhere. Mushroom plates, curtains, wallpaper. The 70s had a love for earthy, natural styles, and mushrooms somehow became the symbol of that trend. It added a certain charm to every corner of the room, something that's hard to replicate today. Saturday mornings in the 1970s weren't complete without a big bowl of sugary cereal and your favorite cartoons. But it wasn't just about the taste. The best part was the toy hidden inside the cereal box. Kids would beg their parents to buy a certain brand just for the toy, which felt like a treasure when you finally dug it out. This excitement made breakfast more than just a meal, it was an adventure. Opening a soda or beer can in the 1970s was a bit of an adventure too. You'd pull back the ring and peel off the aluminum tab, which often ended up on the ground. These sharp tabs were a hazard, especially at the beach or anywhere you might be barefoot. Eventually, they were replaced by the stay tabs we have today. But dealing with those old tabs was just part of the fun of living in the 1970s. Lastly, school lunches in the 1970s weren't complete without a metal lunchbox and a matching thermos. These lunchboxes often featured popular characters from TV or movies, but they weren't exactly durable. A few dings or scratches and the lunchbox would start to rust, yet we used them proudly. The smell of a metal lunchbox after a long hot day is something today's kids, with their insulated bags and ice packs, will never fully understand.